My chip on 18 had every right to go in the hole. I don't know how it didn't go in.
In the mid-2000s, using his unique putting grip, Chris DiMarco consistently clawed his way into contention in majors and big-time events. He often went toe-to-toe with some of the best players during his time, including the then Big Four. Unfortunately, before he lost his form, he never quite got that career-defining win. Greetings, y'all. It's your knock Peter Mata, and today I'm going back to my roots, and we're going to hopefully answer that question of whatever happened to Chris DiMarco. Son to Rick and Norma DiMarco, Chris was born in Huntington, New York, but grew up in Orlando, Florida. His family was very sports-oriented, as his dad played college basketball at St. John's, his brothers were high school football players, and even his eventual nephew went on to play in the NFL. Chris himself partook in the fun, as he did play some high school football before turning his focus to golf. And of course, golf ended up being his calling. A little fun fact about Chris's personal life is that he's known his now wife Amy since the 7th grade, and the two have been together since high school. They've had 3 children together, which includes their son Christian, who is currently a pro golfer himself. Anyways, as Chris went through high school, his golf game began attracting college coaches. Most specifically, University of Florida's coaches Lynn Blevins and Buddy Alexander. They took a liking to his game and ended up getting Chris signed to his dream school. Buddy Alexander did provide a quote years later regarding Chris's recruitment. He said, quote, "Chris knows who he is and what life is all about. We get guys who don't like to work out. We get guys who don't care about what they eat. We get guys who don't like to practice. It's pretty unusual to get one who fits all 3 categories and who can really play." Chris simply wanted to play. He wanted to tee it up and beat somebody. I thought this was an interesting quote, especially when you consider the type of training most players in college golf programs do nowadays. As a Florida Gator, Chris had an impeccable record. His individual SEC title helped lead the Gators to a conference championship in 1989. He was first team All-SEC that year and in 1990 when he was also named SEC Player of the Year. And overall, he was a 7-time medalist, a 3-time All-American, and he was eventually inducted as a Gator Great in UF's Athletic Hall of Fame. With all those accolades, Chris rightfully so felt confident in giving pro golf a go. Thus, in 1990, he turned professional. Getting established, however, did take some time for Chris. For about 8 years, he played on a few different tours, including the South African Tour, the Canadian Tour where he did win the Order of Merit in 1992, and he also played a few years on the Nike Tour. He eventually did get to the PGA Tour in 1994, but his early results were inconsistent. As a result, he had to go back to the minor tours for a couple more years. But he did finally get his PGA Tour card back for the 1998 season, and from there, he got his footing. Along his path to the tour, not only did Chris capture his first professional wins, but he also began experimenting with his putting. He had a little case of the yips and had struggled to solve it after trying many different putters and grips. Finally though, with advice from fellow pro Skip Kindle, Chris started using his claw putting grip that we all know him for, and with it, he produced some of his best results. After decent seasons in 1998 and 1999 where he was able to keep his card, Chris became a steady force on tour in the 2000s. In the 2000 season, Chris captured his first PGA Tour win at the SEI Pennsylvania Classic, where he won by 6 shots. Overall, 2000 was his breakout season, as he made over $1 million and made it to the Tour Championship for the very first time. In addition with that first win, it also secured a spot in his first Masters in 2001, where Chris got off to a great start with rounds of 65, 69, and that gave him the solo lead in each of those first 2 rounds. While he eventually faded to a tied 10th with his 72-74 weekend, the tournament gave a nice preview of his capabilities at Augusta. As he moved through the 2001 season, Chris sustained consistent play. In his 29 starts, he never went more than 5 events without a top 10. In the fall, he put a cherry on it and captured his second PGA Tour win at the Buick Challenge, where he beat David Duval in a playoff. Overall, he bettered his 2000 season as he reached the $2 million mark for the first time and once again made it to the Tour Championship. In 2002, Chris continued to better his results. He built off his hot play in the fall and captured his third win at the Phoenix Open by 1 shot. He stayed consistent throughout 2002 and made roughly $100,000 more than he did in 2001. And again, he made it to the Tour Championship. From 2003 to 2006, this is where Chris's career took, I'll say, an interesting turn. Because 2002 was the last year he won on the PGA Tour. But the next few years after that are really the years he's remembered most for. In 2003, he had a very similar season to his 2002 campaign. Obviously he didn't win, but he was very solid and was steady enough to earn his way onto the US President's Cup team. In the event, he went 2-3-0, and of course that was the year of the legendary tie between the US and the international team. In 2004, Chris stepped up to the big boys table and started to become a real threat in majors and in big time events. At that year's Masters, he played nicely through 3 rounds, and with it, he was able to secure a share of the lead and a final round pairing with Phil Mickelson. Unfortunately for Chris, he couldn't keep up pace with the leaders as he ended up finishing tied 6th with a final round 76. Interesting enough, he also helped give Phil a read on the last green, which of course led to this magical moment. At the US Open that year, he never was a real threat to winning, but he did play good enough for a backdoor top 10. At the PGA that year though, Chris was right there through 72 holes and more. Grinding it out in tough conditions on Sunday, Chris posted early and waited as Vijay Singh and Justin Leonard finished. At the end of regulation, the 3 of them found themselves in a 3-hole aggregate playoff. While Chris grinded hard, it was eventually Vijay who ended up capturing the major. Despite the tough defeat, all was not lost on Chris, as his second place did earn him a spot on the US Ryder Cup team. At the event, while the US team ended up losing badly, Chris played well individually with a 2-1-1 record. Now we reach 2005, where Chris was really only a handful of shots away from an absolute fantastic year. Starting in February, he made it all the way to the final match in the WGC Accenture Match Play Championship, only to end up losing to David Toms. Then, of course, we have the 2005 Masters, which I'd say is Chris's most memorable tournament. Again, he took the lead in the first 2 rounds, but after a disastrous 3rd round back 9, he found himself 3 shots back of Tiger heading to the final round. In that classic final round, Tiger and Chris were paired together and they went mano-a-mano on the back 9. After a wild finish in regulation, the two headed to the 18th hole for a sudden death playoff. While Chris played his absolute heart out, Tiger mustered enough to put it past him and snatch that green jacket. One thing I don't think many people know is that Chris had great chances to win his next 2 events. At my home state's Zurich Classic, he had the lead in that final round, but ended up finishing a shot off of the eventual playoff. At the Wachovia Championship, he was in contention late, but couldn't quite close the gap and ended up finishing solo 4th. Later in the year, Chris had a couple other chances. At the WGC NEC Invitational, he again was in contention against Tiger. He grinded out a tough final day and posted a strong score, but again Tiger mustered enough to beat him. At the 84 Lumber Classic, he was in contention again, but couldn't quite close the gap and ended up finishing tied 5th. Despite not winning, all these close calls contributed to Chris's best season in terms of earnings and rankings. He earned $3.5 million and finished a career best 7th on the money list. And he also reached his career best world ranking of 6th. These results helped him once again qualify for the US President's Cup team, where he did have one of his finest moments. With his 4-0-1 record and this clutch putt, Chris was the one who clinched the cup for the US. Building on that result, Chris was able to finally close the tournament in early 2006. He won the inaugural Abu Dhabi Golf Championship on the European Tour by one shot over Henrik Stenson. Unfortunately, after this great start to his year, Chris suffered an injury while skiing. He fell awkwardly and tweaked the sensitive intercostal muscles between the ribs on his left side. While the injury took months to fully heal, Chris played through it. The results, though, weren't to his typical standards, as he missed cuts and didn't record any top 10s. Sadly, Chris had more tough times going through that summer, as his mother passed away on July 4th from a heart attack. For his way of grieving, Chris found it very therapeutic for him to be out there competing. Thus, he decided to go on and play the Open Championship. Just like Tiger that week, Chris played with a heavy heart, and once again, the two of them went at it in a big-time tournament. Going to the final round, Chris was one shot back of the lead held by Tiger and was slotted into the second-to-last group with Ernie Els. Playing steady through the final round, Chris charged it up with a couple back nine birdies that got him back within one shot of Tiger. But, as Tiger does, he pulled away with 3 straight birdies and once again got the better of Chris, who ended up finishing solo second, 2 shots back. With this runner-up and decent play during the rest of the season, Chris did secure a spot on the US Ryder Cup team. Regrettably though, Chris didn't play too well, as his 0-3-1 record contributed to another US loss to the Europeans. Overall, while Chris had a solid season by tour standards, he did miss the Tour Championship for the first time in 6 seasons. And this, along with other struggles during 2006, were a sign of things to come for the rest of his PGA Tour career. For many, that 06 Open runner-up and Ryder Cup was probably the last time they remembered seeing Chris. So with that, I'd say it brings us to that title question. Whatever happened to Chris DiMarco? Well, in 2007, he only recorded 1 top 10 and finished 97th in the first year of the FedEx Cup rankings. But what was really bothering Chris that year was a left shoulder injury. The injury bothered him every swing, and specifically on driver swings. He couldn't control where his drives went, and he was struggling to put any speed on it. In the fall of that year, he eventually underwent arthroscopic surgery on the shoulder and took the rest of the season off. Alas though, while the surgery did relieve Chris's pain, he never recaptured that consistency he had in his prime. But you do have to think that age played a factor. By 2007, Chris was already 39, and as we all know, when you get older, there are a number of things that begin to change, and especially for golfers. Your swing naturally loses speed, the nagging injuries begin to pile up, and in the case for players like Chris, who have made a great living playing, the motivation does start to waver. But anyways, from 2008 to 2013, the last season he played fully, he only recorded 4 top 10s in total and made the playoffs just 2 times. At the end of 2013, he couldn't retain his card at the Web.com Tour Finals and was forced to rely on past champion status and sponsor exemptions for starts. While he had mediocre results, he was still a fan favorite during this time. For instance, I distinctly remember the Zurich Classic putting him on their brochures as one of the main draws to the tournament. From 2014 to 2017, Chris basically semi-retired and only played in about a dozen events total, and produced lackluster results to boot. During this time, he mostly focused on a different career as a commentator. He hosted a radio show called Opinionated on Sirius XM Radio, and also, as I'm sure some of you noticed, he was a frequent contributor on the Golf Channel. Since 2018, Chris has refocused his golf career, and he started competing on the Champions Tour, where he hasn't won yet, but he has contended in some events. So that's pretty much what Chris DiMarco has been up to. Just to input my thoughts on him, while there's no reason for him to hang his head at all about his career, it definitely has got to bite a bit to not get more wins and or capture one of those big time tournaments that he was right there for. It reminds me of a couple current players, Tony Finau and Kevin Kisner. Like Chris, both are consistently contending in tournaments, but they don't quite close it out as much as they could. Granted, another big thing with Chris is that the times he did play his best and lost, it was against big name players. Obviously Tiger, VJ, Phil, Ernie, David Toms, and the list goes on. Now, Chris wasn't the longest or most talented by any means, but what he was a competitor. And after reading even more about him for this video, I can see why he's respected by other players and a fan favorite. He's a straight gamer, and I hinted at this earlier in the Buddy Alexander quote. Unlike other pros, Chris had a homemade swing, he never had a coach, he didn't really have a big sports entourage, and his warm-ups consisted of very few practice shots. He was all about competing and playing fearless, and there's something to be said about that. He raised his game when he was playing against the best, which we definitely get those cases in all of sports where players and teams play over their heads in primetime situations, and oftentimes we sports fans love that underdog fighter who gives it all they got. So, while it's sort of a shame he never got that career-defining victory, he again has nothing to hang his head about. He made a great living, and we probably remember him more because he never quit and he kept putting himself up there. But yeah, I wish Chris well on the Champions Tour, and you never know, maybe he'll get those big wins to finish off his golfing career on a high note. Anyways, hope y'all enjoyed the video. Definitely let me know what you guys think. What do you think ever happened to Chris DiMarco? Thanks again for watching, y'all, and as always, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Your words mean something to me.